When I first watched this, I was crying my eyes out because it's 2018, y'all. This isn't like the 50s, the 60s. This was 2 years ago. So I'm going to call up our panelists, and then we'll get started. Angel Lumen from AS 220, Shonda Womack from Arise, Carla Vigil from the Equity Institute, Bennett from United Way Rhode Island, sit wherever y'all want, and Engin Visit from NAACP Providence. All right, so the last line was, if your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to stop it. So, as we see from this unfortunate experience in Georgia, it still exists. We know it's elsewhere, but is it here in Rhode Island? I'm going to talk about some of the tactics the voter suppression tactics that were talked about in the movie, and then I'll give you some context for Rhode Island so you can see what we have done, and if I'm wrong, anybody from the team can correct me. But voter suppression tactics in the movie: exact match law, voter ID, purging or some sort of removal of voters, closing polling places, delaying registering new voters, not receiving absentee ballots in time, long lines, possibly on purpose, provisional ballot steps and not counting them. So, in Rhode Island, this is me doing my homework as a former reporter, we do not have exact match law, thank God. We just paid for new money for new technology, I think, so we're purchasing new technology. We do have a voter ID law that was passed in 2011, but has since been eased. You can use an old ID that has expired up to 6 months. You can change affiliation within 30 days rather than 90 days, which it used to be. You have your voter rights restored after completing a prison sentence. That is here. There's a new central voter registration that was announced this month. You can have your kids accompany you to the voting booth, which is good if you need to drag them with you, and teach them something at the same time. I think that's all the ones. Oh, and I pulled up a story that was written this month from the Providence Journal, and this is the connection to Georgia. So Governor Raimondo, who, full disclosure, I work for, announced a new partnership between the Democratic Governors Association and Fair Fight, which is an organization launched by Stacey Abrams to battle perceived attempts to suppress the vote for traditionally undercounted voting blocks. So she just relinquished DGA, her leadership as DGA, Governor Raimondo, but she was the one that announced this year, this month, actually, earlier this month. And it's a way to, it's an effort to have every state and every vote count. So it does exist. When Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea says there have been actions, clearly there have been in Rhode Island. Are they enough? When you see this in the movie, some of them are still here in people's opinions, and everybody has a right to opinion, so we're going to treat that with respect tonight. So, I'm going to open this up to the panel. Testing. I'll give the mic to whoever wants to go first. But out of the tactics, why are you raising your hand already? We're going to put limits on certain people to like a minute or less in his comments, because if some of y'all know, some speak longer than others. But my first question, and I am going to ask anybody from the audience if they have a question, but my first question, in watching this, is there one voter suppression tactic that you believe that was in the video that still exists here in Rhode Island? Who wants to start? Jim Visit.
The reason why I'm so eager to start is because, as Alicia mentioned, we have photo ID in Rhode Island. It happened in 2011. It was at a time when the only states that actually passed photo ID laws were Republican-controlled states, and it was in response to what was then deemed unthinkable, the election of a black man to the White House in 2009. So you had maybe a dozen or so states that passed these laws almost automatically, almost all Republican-based. So I remember the NAACP and ACLU and Common Cause being in the fight to not have that law here. But it passed without any evidence of any kind of voter fraud. It passed without any kind of rhyme or reason whatsoever. You had people in the House and the Senate that said, well, you know, my vote was stolen, and that might have been true. And then another person was concerned about illegal voting without any evidence. But it was amazing how you have a democratically led state, in 2011 now, with the Speaker of the House being a Democrat and all up and down the line, and you had one of the most, at that time, one of the most voter suppressive tactics, photo ID, enacted in the Ocean State. So I was really upset then, for more reasons that I want to get into, but I still think that states that have photo ID, as opposed to states that don't, still disproportionately disenfranchise people of color, young people, homeless, elderly, regardless of what you do.
Beautiful. That was only a minute, too. I'm so proud of you.
I know you time it.
And I know voter ID here, you can use your college ID, so just so people saw that on the film. Anybody else want to answer that? What is the lead suppression voting tactic that you think is here in Rhode Island? Kyle, you looking like you want to time.
So this wasn't one that was mentioned in the film, but the idea of local control, people from the neighborhood working the polls. Each year, the Board of Elections and the Secretary's office, they reach out to folks and ask who wants to work the poll. How many people have worked the poll? Right, so when I lived in Elmwood, I worked the poll in Elmwood. When I lived in Fox Point, I worked the poll in Fox Point. When I lived in Mount Pleasant, I worked the poll in Mount Pleasant. And each of the 3 times, I was the warden of the poll. But as I moved from neighborhood to neighborhood, I didn't always know the people in the neighborhood. And one of the jobs as a warden is to really be the ultimate decider, to quote another former president, in case of strife, but to also be able to fix challenges. So when you have people who are running the poll that don't know the folks from the neighborhood, when there's a question about someone's name, whether it's the exact law, whether they have a different ID, they're neighborhood folks. When you have people who come from anywhere that are just working for a honest day's pay, and they don't really know the neighbors, they don't have the connectivity to the neighborhood, it's not necessarily a tactic, but it could potentially become a tactic, because I see not as many resources going into driving more neighborhood folks to work the poll. And I think if we want to counter that, so to think of it from a strengths-based perspective, we should all get involved wherever possible. And I realize that because of some of the places that we work and the opportunities that we have to take a day off, it's not always available for everyone, but I think we should all make an effort to work the poll. Get to know your neighbors, but be there to be part of the solution. Don't let someone else come into your neighborhood and then disenfranchise your neighbors against exercising their democratic right to vote.
Anybody else?
Hi everyone, I'm Angel. Thank you so much for having us today. I'm really happy to be on the panel with y'all. I don't feel like I know any more about this than probably most people in the room, so I'm learning as well. I'm really honored to be here, so thanks. One thing that I was just reminiscing, so I grew up on the border of Cranston, Providence, and had most recently been living off Webster Ave. I don't know how many people know that neighborhood, but it's like hyper-police. Like the border is like super, it's like a highly policed neighborhood. Cranston cops don't always, they're not always the most friendly to folks of color. And I think like one of the things the film didn't cover, but I know I dealt with in my family living on the border there, is, again, I think compounded issues that kind of like play out on voting day around just like going out of your house and being like heavily policed. And that would sway your maybe like want or will to go and vote. Like, I don't know about you all, but there's days like going to the market is like a risk, right? Like you have to decide, especially if you're driving a car that's like dirty, right? Like your insurance isn't good or it may not be registered or whatever else, you know, I've had all these issues personally. I'm very open about that, as I think a lot of us probably have. And like, that's a decision, right? I'm like, oh, I'm going to like Stop and Shop today or do I want to get pulled over? I probably don't want to get pulled over. So, you know, it's just those decisions you have to make when you're not riding legit. Because of lack of financial resources or the time to actually go and like deal with some of these like really minor things that happen to be like fines for like traffic tickets, right? Might make somebody not want to actually go to the poll. So I think there's a lot of issues outside of just like direct tactics, but just fear that people have.
One thing that resonated with me in the film was the young lady from college, and talking about taking the course and then having to go vote 4 hours later and having
The history course.
The history course, right? So what sparked some thoughts there was the lack of education in understanding the voting process and the power that it has, specifically with our youth, because I know there was a time in my life where I didn't believe in voting. Like I thought, like, you know, it doesn't matter if I vote, it's one vote, it's rigged. So you have all these thoughts and ideas because of lack of knowledge and lack of resources. So I think tying that into what are we doing on an education level early on to really engage our learners to understand this process and understand the impact that it has when you don't vote.
Absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong, you can register to vote at 16?
Yeah.
16.
See?
See? I remember that in writing. So, is there, I'm going to trade off. Is there a question from the audience? And then we'll go back to one of my questions and we'll go to questions.
I have a question. Just to be clear though, you can only vote when you're 18.
Yes,
You
you can register at 16 but can't vote till 18. Any question from the audience? Oh, because I can ask questions.
I have a question.
You can't be on the panel and have a question.
I have a question for the audience.
Go ahead.
You know, when was the last time you checked your voter record? Did anybody look at their voter registration?
Last year. I went online the same week, made sure everything was up to date, and all of us, so I don't know if anybody heard me, but I checked last year, went online, made sure everything was up to date. I get to the voter thing and they give me the provisional voter panel. I'm like, everything's right here, I'm showing you online, I did everything I needed to do. So it's just very frustrating. I'm like, wow, I'm watching the film, like, well, that just happened to me, like, a year ago. Well, like, yeah, a year ago. So it can be very frustrating when you do everything you're supposed to do and then you get hit with that and then you call the phone number and they're like, oh, you don't need to call back. Verbatim, everything. So it's just very frustrating to see this is a real thing.
Daryl, you got a comment?
I have a question.
Oh,
All right, I don't think I did question. Everybody hear me? Right, so when I was little, what my mom used to do, she would put 2 outfits on the bed and say, oh, pick your outfit to go to school, right? Many of us parents probably did that. And the reason why they did that was to make us feel like we actually made a choice.
have a choice.
But we're a lot smarter than that. So the question would be, and this is something I struggle with as an adult, so also for the children, the youth, how do we reconcile that conflict? Because we know there's 2 parties to choose from. And looking at that video, it was great information. You can also see that it seems to be from a Democratic point of view. And so when you're in a situation where you have 2 choices that you necessarily don't want to choose, what do we do? Besides not vote at this point.
All right. So the question is, if there's only
I just think that was going to be bad.
poison A and poison B, what do you do? Who wants to? Shonda.
You know, y'all know I always keep it real, and I'm usually always the last one to speak. But let's just keep it real. We are depending on actual governmental institutions, laws, and policies that were meant and developed to disenfranchise communities of color, particularly blacks. Let's keep it all the way real, because that's just what happened up in there. It's, you know, we had the Board of Elections, we had old dude running, you know, the Secretary of State, and then he's also the Empire. Like, those are real analogies that popped off in there. And that actually happened, right? So we are depending on folks and policies and laws to protect us when they were not meant to protect us. So let's keep it all the way real. So what do? The crazy thing is, I always feel like I'm going into an election voting for the lesser of the evil. Damn, do we get a Trump or do we get a Clinton? We have a Trump. You know what I'm saying? So unless we change institutionally and systematically, and we take it to the streets, as you saw at the very end, the last 3 minutes of the film, for me, was the most critical part. Because it just proved to us that if you want any type of change, it has to be in the streets. Yes, everybody has their little roles that they play, the vital roles that they play, but any change that happened during the Civil Rights Movement, folks took it to the streets. And that's what happened. So, I did not become a citizen until 6-7 years ago, and I'm very proud to say that and own that, in that I was struggling with whether or not I wanted to become a citizen of a country, by the way, that was responsible for annihilating 1/3 of my country's population. Okay? So I was struggling with that. So since I became a citizen, yes, I go and vote. We had these little debates in the house with my husband, and sometimes it's like, you know, I ain't gonna talk to you. If you don't vote for this person, I'm not rocking with you. But I really, and I put this, I think on Facebook 2 years ago, and I said, and Ron recognized it, and I said, listen, if you are a political candidate, don't come ask for my vote. I don't care if you're a Republican, I don't care if you're Democrat, I don't care if you're independent. I don't rock with people. I rock with their ideologies and the actions that align with it. That's it. Because we've had Democrats that have done more harm than some Republicans. That's just real. Look it up. That's a fact. I didn't come out of nowhere, but that is a fact.
So, I guess one of her answers is go with the ideology of the lesser of two evils. I lost my thought. I was so into it. She has a way of doing that. I know. Trust me, I know. She's pissed. And I think this is what this does, right? And it's like you feel all this like pain inside, and all you want to do is like fight, right? The title of this event. But back to what you were saying, I think one of the biggest things that we need to do besides fight and take it to the streets is think about what are we doing with our kids and teaching them history. And I think that when you know your history, you have more knowledge, and you have more knowledge to make a better decision, right? Henry Louis Gates Jr. talks about this Reconstruction era and what happened after the Reconstruction era when black men were freed and allowed the right to vote. It changed shit up for a while, and until white people got mad. And that's what's happening right now. And then they did a rollback, and it set everything back 20 years back, right? And they started a new modern type of slavery. And so I think that what he says is that it's important to know what happened during this Reconstruction era because it's a precursor to what's happening today. And right now what's happening is that white people are scared. They are scared because they know that there is power in people, and they know that there is power in black people, specifically. And now other growing populations. They know they're going to be outnumbered. So they're doing everything in their power to change that. There are laws in place, and I think that we all sometimes feel safe. We feel safe that women can, have the right to control their bodies, the right to vote. These things are not honored. At the end of the day, courts make systems, exactly what you're talking about. There are systems that we rely on and that we have faith in, but they don't work because at the end of the day, they were built to not work for folks. And so I think part of it is education for me, and I may be biased, I work in education, but to me, education is the entry point to disruption. And so things need to happen simultaneously, and obviously everybody plays a role in changing these things. Jim?
And if you don't, I'm just going to stop, I'm going to let you speak, but if you don't like the choices, get involved and get a person you like.
Right.
That is where you have to start earlier. You can't just say, hey, there's 3 months left, I'm going to see who I like and whoever's the lesser of the two evils. Sometimes that just happens, but sometimes you need to get involved. Just showing up to vote may not be enough. I helped with a campaign. I never do campaigns. And I helped because I believed in the person. I know he wasn't the best person, but he was the best person out of the candidates in my heart. And I don't even live in that city. And I was like, I'm gonna help. Because I felt that we needed to make a statement regardless. And it was hard given I worked for the government. So that was, and my boss used to work for the candidate that he was going against. But I stuck my guns and I said, this is what I believe in and I'm gonna help. He didn't win, but he made a statement. And there were more voters in the next election because of him. And so if I didn't make a difference this time around, I knew I was gonna make a difference the next time around. And we learned to educate more, get kids involved early so they would know that yes, there's option A and B today, but your voice is always gonna matter. Jim, did you want to answer that question from Dale?
Not really, because that's a personal choice, and I don't want to suggest to tell you how you should figure that out. I'd like to switch up a little bit because we're here in Rhode Island, we have a limited amount of time here, and we got to deal with our state. And I, as part of the National NAACP, we've been tasked with working with groups like the Divine Nine, Historically Black sororities and fraternities, the Masons and the Ministerial Alliance and others to do that kind of education and registration. So look to us in the next couple of months to be talking more about those kinds of things. But we, I mentioned the photo ID of 2011. Okay, so that's passed, and we have now a Secretary of State that's in there, knowing good bad, that's trying to do things to make it easier for all of us to vote. Last year, and it wasn't a gimme, automatic voter registration was passed. Okay, that's something that came out of the Secretary of State's office. Automatic voter registration is very important because it helps in terms of that voter registration effort that we all talk about and sometimes fall short of. So now we have that, and that's going to help our community be participating in the electoral process. But we have another issue that didn't pass, and we got to make sure that it passes this year. Because I think this is her 5th attempt, Melissa, or 6th attempt, and that's early voting. 5th attempt, early voting. So if you really want to do one thing, and one thing only, I would say let's get involved with the early voting campaign. I'm part of an alliance of groups, and anybody can jump in, the water's fine, all right? Let's do the early voting to make sure that people that are working 2 or 3 jobs on that particular Tuesday can vote early in the state without having to use an absentee ballot, which is not the way to use an absentee ballot. Okay, so early voter registration is something, or early voting, I should say, is something we're going to be looking to work with people on, so that the 2 weeks before or maybe the weekend before, you can actually cast your vote early. The sky's not going to fall. In the last election, 2016 national election, 46% of the country voted early. They did not vote on that day. So it's not unique. It's being done in 35 other states. Rhode Island doesn't have it, it should have it. It's going to make it better for our community if we have it.
Absolutely. So my next question, this month there was talk about having voter emails, people emailing in their vote from far away, and it was tabled because of the resistance from whatever media, Projo wrote a op-ed saying how bad it was, and then it got stopped. What are your thoughts on people emailing, making it easier? They talked about technology being an issue, that it could be tampered with. What are y'all's thoughts of voter, and I'm going to poll the audience as well, but what are your thoughts towards being able to email your vote in? Kyle?
So I'm all for technology. I think anything that makes it easier for the people to exercise their right to vote, I'm down with it. I think we have to look at some secure measures, but we also have to look at the measures that protect our data that we're using right now. if you can infiltrate someone's database, you can alter the rules, so whether you vote in person or electronically, your records still match. And that's changing addresses, changing names, the spelling of names. So I think we are doing some of that work, and that's admirable. But I also think there are other ways we can go about this. I mean, you can apply for a birth certificate online, you can apply for your driver's license online, you can do all this stuff online already, so why not cast your vote? What does it take to secure that vote in a digital form?
Angel?
Honest, until you asked, I never really had an opinion about it. But I feel like, I mean, people are using bank cards online all the time, like some of your most personal information, and there's human error in everything. Like, we see the stuff that happens just like while people are counting ballots, like in person. So I think like you're not gonna escape human error, you're not gonna escape like potential conflict. I don't think that's a reason to like limit access for people. So I think as long as enough resources are put into it and there's like some type of testing phase, like I think that's key with anything. Test it out before you try to release it on election day, and then well, let's try it. Can't get much worse, right? So
Rhode Island has a history of failing with technology.
Right. I didn't want to say it, but I was like, we've seen that happen. As we go. We've seen that happen, so we should test it before we do it. Test the car before you buy it.
Shonda, opinion? Take the mic, honey.
I usually don't like to comment when I don't have enough information, so I'll just not comment at all.
Okay. Any question from the audience? Sir?
I think in this state, most elections are decided in the primaries, especially like local elections, and people don't know when they're going on, especially if it's like an emergency one. Do you guys have any idea, anyone up there, like, what's the best way to, raise awareness or share that knowledge with the community of primaries and their importance? And also what happens in the back office, because sometimes I see the totals and it doesn't seem like they add up, especially the recent city council election that happened in the city.
Best tactics for promoting primaries. Kyle?
I was just talking about this a little bit earlier. This year, we're gonna have 3 elections, right? We have a presidential primary, statewide primary, and the general election. So April, September, and November. We don't have those on our calendars yet. What the question you're asking is about the mismatch between people who are eligible to vote and those who turn out to vote. A lot of times you don't know in enough advance, so you can't take the time out of work or alter your schedule or do what it takes. We've got to get these dates on our calendar. And then every vehicle that we have, everyone in this room needs to use your social media platform, needs to use your vocal platform. Start talking to your neighbors, your family, and your friends. Tell them these dates. And I'll tell you 2 other things you should remember too. We also have Census 2020 happening by April 1st. You've got to make sure that everybody you know completes the census. It's more important than it ever has been. Not only could we lose a seat in Congress, which some people might think is a good idea, but we could also lose $3.8 billion that supports our state budget. We got a budget of almost $10 billion. If we lose $3.8 billion, guess what kind of cuts are going to be made? They're going to be pretty drastic. So we're going to think about census, we're going to think about election, and we also have to think about where we connect with the people in our community. How do you get ahead of it? Let's start getting the word out. It's December 30th right now, so we don't have to vote until April. We got 4 months to get in front of it. But that means at the barbershop, at the salon, at the club, all the DJs out here, DJ Cast My Vote, where you at? Right, but I mean, everywhere where people congregate, we got to get that word out and make sure that people know it's important to cast your vote. Make sure that you're counted on the census and in the election.
Have a drink, but please remember to vote. Anybody else want to comment on that? Some reasons, some tactics to get the promoting of primaries.
It's not directly connected to that, but it's like a spin-off. It just made me think about just like, I think voting is really important. It's one of the most important things we can do as citizens of the U.S. But I also think and want to encourage everyone not to just think of yourself as a voter, but like run for office too. Like it's not I don't think we need to just be picking from people we don't necessarily like maybe care for or our politics don't align, but like every person in this room theoretically has the ability to run, just depending on your age and I guess how long you've been here. But I think it's important to get to know like what ward you're in if you're from Providence. I think like making sure you know like your city councilors and making sure that you understand how important local politics actually is and not just be voting for presidential, elections. And really, I think start imagining yourself in those seats. Like, why not? Like, I'm not a fool to think that all change is gonna happen in those seats, but it does, like part of it does, right? And I think we need to be doing both. I think we can't just be on the receiving end and complaining about what's getting decided. I think we need to be those people in those seats. And if not you, I think like you were saying, getting behind folks who have the interest in running and trying to build campaigns and get them, like we see it all the time, like folks can't, carry out campaigns due to resources and human resources and people's faith and support. So I just really want to encourage folks to start thinking about the wards you're in, think about when people's times are up who are currently in those seats and consider running. And then thinking about what to get your kids or your youth that you're, maybe you work in a youth program like me, like how are we helping them practice to be ready for those seats through student councils, youth councils, even at your home, how do you have a democratic process, do I, and really starting to embody what this stuff means before age 18.
It takes courage to run.
Do you mind?
Yes, sure.
No, say it loud. Last election, most of the seats in the General Assembly, maybe half or so, had nobody running against them.
Yeah.
Right? And anybody in this room could run. And I think that's another way to get local communities engaged. We need people to run who are not lawyers, who are, there are lawyers at the State House to help you learn how to write law, right? You don't need that. You need to just be a good person with good ideas. And if you don't like a candidate, run. There's an open seat right now in Central Falls. There's one candidate. It ended today. That person is guaranteed to get that seat because unless there's an unusual write-in against him, he's going to be the new representative. One person ran. I mean, that's fine. I think he's okay, but we could do better with better choices.
And you'll hear people say, oh, that's a long shot. Well, make him not a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
Make her not a long shot.
Right.
If you ain't satisfied, run yourself.
Right, and I think more important than encouraging people to run is actually being there, offering whatever support you have. Because I think I see very often, like I was, asked a question on another panel a few months ago, on like, well, how do you encourage more women of color to run? Well, more importantly, what is your plan to support this woman of color when she does run? I'm gonna need you to tell me that before I put my name on the damn ballot. No, seriously, because then I can make an informed decision. Because I think like all too often, we do have these hopes and dreams and like, damn, I see you running for this and you should aspire to do this, I got your back. I need to know how are you gonna have my back? Because I'm gonna need somebody to have my side, my front, like all of that. You know what I mean? That's very real. Furthermore, education was mentioned a couple of times here. The folks in this room and the panel, I encourage y'all to show up. We're suing Raimondo, Cook versus Raimondo. You know what I'm saying? A lack of civics education. Well, God damn it, we're talking about civics here, okay? It is not a constitutional right for young people to get an adequate education, okay? We have been shot down twice, so we're taking the back door. So now we're saying, young people don't have an adequate civics education. They don't know the 3 branches of government. They don't know what they do, okay? How are we encouraging young people to get involved, to run for office, to serve on a jury? They don't even know what their council members do. Get what I'm saying? So for the folks who are here, who really want systems, institutional change, I hope y'all showing up in the courtroom when our young people who are plaintiffs, right? Are here and brave enough and courageous enough to say, yo, this is unlawful. You are violating our civil rights. We see it manifesting. Like, my recommendation is voter suppression is an epidemic. Our resistance has to be a pandemic. I'm gonna leave with that.
She can drop the mic all the time. Jim.
I'm trying not to ever follow Shonda, but it's not working. No, for those people who think that your vote don't count, there was a who's now in the legislature, but at one point he was a challenger, challenging a popular incumbent.
Lost by one vote.
Sorry. All right. His name was Carlos Toban, and it was in Pawtucket, and he lost by one vote. One vote. And you know how many people that he had in his family or friends that probably thought either he didn't have a chance or he had it in the bag, and they decided to go to the club or to go to the barbershop or whatever they did, but not to the poll that day. One vote. Now, look, fortunately, the next time he ran, he won. But, you know, I can never forget Carlos Tobin in that one vote. And there's other examples that I can...
Recently in Mass, she won by one vote, like an activist.
There's a myriad of examples of people that have lost by one vote. But this is in Rhode Island, and this is recent, in the last 5 years. So I want to echo what we're trying to say in terms of that lawsuit. That lawsuit could go to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yep.
So it's very serious, and it's being led by some very capable people, as well as the people that matter most, which are the children. All right. Now, we need to be focused, though. Like I said, I talked about early voting. We're going to have to do a lot of education. We're going to have to do a lot of registration. So I say, do it by any means necessary. If it's got to be, you mentioned the barbershops, we could do it on the radio, newspapers, television. We have, I don't know how many nonprofits, how many associations. We need to really be serious about coming together to let people know what the choices are and to also make sure that we can get them to the polls. I know the NAACP, we work with churches and we try to get the vans so that they can take the souls to the polls. Okay? All right? All right? Souls to the polls.
Good campaign.
Souls to the
Just
polls.
say it.
Okay. All right. So you can do a lot of different creative things to get people to the polls, and trust me, you know, we're not going to stop there. There's other things you can do, but don't think that you have no clout or no skill or whatever. Everybody in here can play a role. Everybody. There's not a person in here that cannot play a significant role. So look to yourselves over the next 4 months, because if things don't go the way you would want them, look at yourself first. Look at yourself first, because if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu.
Can't chime with the one-liners. Juan, you have a question?
Sorry, normally I don't make a speech, but I actually want to follow up on what Jim said. Jim, one year we did NAACP NYC, we did a Lyft and a Uber drive to to get elders to the polls. We were the first in the country to do that. And so what it is I convinced Uber to give a promo code back and forth to the polls, and then I went and played against Lyft and had Lyft do the same thing. I think we ended up having 62 people poll in Rhode Island going back and forth, so we were the first to do that. And there was also a way to get generations to work together, meaning you had some elders who weren't familiar with technology, you had the grandchildren who were, so it was a way to get them engaged. Even this event was very spontaneous. I want to thank Melissa's husband for introducing me to Stacey Abrams, and then looking at the documentary, and I'm like, wow, this really happened last year. You know, so it's, even if it's spontaneity, like I'm very spontaneous with things, like even with that ride share to the votes, and then this event, doing it at the second to last day of the year, to get everyone thinking of 2020. There's a lot going on in 2020, and not to wait until the last minute to get your things in order. You know what I'm saying? When it is vote, and Dale, like you mentioned about having the lesser evil list, it's running for office. I'm not one for politics, to be honest with you. And anyone who knows me, I'm not one for politics. And I'm not one for a broken system. You know what I'm saying? But I'm one to continue to try to disrupt it. I'll write in, if I don't like somebody, guess whose name's going in there? You know what I'm saying? So I'm still going to exercise my vote. It's just going to be me, because I'm not going to choose one of the two, but I'm going to write it in so that I still put my vote in. But now that we need some substance, now we need to make and create candidates, not just worry about voting, you know what I'm saying, and civically engaged, but civic action, that includes becoming one of the choices. And so that's something that I'm trying to make sure, even with this, someone out here or inspire someone to move any position, from council position to running for mayor, to the governor, you know what I'm saying, whatever it is, where you think you can move the needle. Because I see a lot of them not needles moving. Like I said, I've been to a lot of organizations, I'm like, dude, you're not moving, making any progress, because you're doing things the same way. You know what I'm saying? So disrupt it, go the opposite way. Try it. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna try it. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in.
Mine was more like 5 cents.
1 second. So I do have a question. There was a part of the film that talked about long lines. So in Rhode Island, we've written about long lines. I've been in long lines, hour, 2 hour. How long is too long? Because there were people on there that said 6 hours.
Right.
Is there an average wait? Do we have an average wait, Mr. Rock? Is there an average wait in Rhode Island? Do you know what it was the last?
I don't know what the average wait was, but I know there was an organization that did a study about what is too long, and they said the average, or people shouldn't have to wait more than half an hour to cast a ballot. That was a national study that was done. The President Obama put together a commission to discuss things like that, and that's what one of the things that came out of that commission was establishing a 30-minute kind of threshold for what's too long and what's not.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. What was the longest wait in Rhode Island? Do you know what it was? Do you guys keep track of that at all?
In what year?
The last election.
2018, I know that lines were not an issue in 2018. I know 2016, there were a couple issues in, especially in the city of Pawtucket, where the wait was longer than 2 hours, I believe, in like a handful of locations. Kind of the perfect storm on a bunch of different things, long ballots, more people voting than usual. But by and large, Rhode Island doesn't have a line issue. There are pockets of, but most folks don't have to wait in line long to cast a ballot in Rhode Island.
Anybody disagree?
Well, I just think that probably equally as pressing a question is where's the disparity in communities? So could we see that data disaggregated by community zip code? Because I would imagine we're going to see a similar thing.
So if we know a half an hour, then y'all are doing work to make sure that's the case, right?
Of course.
You had a question.
I did. So a couple things. First, a follow-up to thank you for saying what you did, because I was thinking about, Election Day it should be civic engagement day. Go protest, go write your own name and do something so you're building your muscle. And then you know that that's going to be activated every election day. You're just kind of building your practice. But more, I was thinking about what role the schools have, what role the social studies teachers have in a district like Providence. And this is something I care about personally because I work for the city of Providence for Providence Public Schools, and really moving the social studies teacher leaders on this issue has been hard. And which, this is the most important thing to me. So how do I get the film in their hands? I've been trying very much to have them have materials that are much more culturally responsive. I've got teachers now presenting and talking about, the new Jim Crow, where these books were not in their classrooms before. But it literally means me buying them for them.
Well, this video is on YouTube, by the way.
So to me, this is like, what I'd like to do is actually screen the video with the social studies teacher leaders in Providence Public Schools, but also then have a discussion that they can then bring to their classroom. I mean, there's so much, but bring.
Well, you have a room full of people willing to help you with that.
And I'm calling.
You got at least 3, 4, 5 people on this panel willing to help you with that. I'm just saying.
Well, I also feel like that. Oh, that's a big. It's big. Big battle. I mean, you just you just mentioned a lot there, and I didn't want to go there because I didn't want to mention like teachers and Providence and put those two words together. Just because this is not just a video, right? And it's not just a book. It's way deeper than that. So when you don't understand systemically, you don't understand the concepts and the language, a book and a video is never going to do justice. Actually, it could actually perpetuate more inequities because you don't have the background. So there's so many steps that need to happen before you can be that teacher, right? So.
But I will say that there are teachers who are ready. There are definitely teachers and educators who are ready, and it takes one person. And I said the second person is the most courageous because they're like, yo, you're all by yourself, I got your back, and that's how movements get started. So there are amazing teachers because we are partnering up with some folks who we would not normally partner up with, but to provide some PD this summer to some Providence teachers on our ethnic studies curriculum that, by the way, is nationally regionally known. Okay? And that took a partnership with, you know, Providence, that it's credit bearing at Alvarez, credit bearing at Costco. Like, we have to start somewhere, but we developed that in-house. We were not waiting for a system that, by the way, was not meant for us to develop it. Right. So we develop it, we gonna start a movement, who's ever on board, let's go. If you're not, then just move out the way.
Hey, go ahead, Ms. Angel, and then Kyle.
Hey Gigi, nice to see you.
I know, well, I've already worked with all of you.
Gigi, shout out.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but I also want to make sure that I'm not suggesting it's just a book. I'm not suggesting it's just one thing.
We know.
It's every point of access, right? I get it. Go ahead, sorry.
No, definitely. It just made me think about my experience at Providence College because I'm now in the grad program there in urban teaching, and it's my first time. So like I come from the out of school world, like working at AS 220. I got my civic engagement education there at an arts program, right? Like that's where I learned about Black history. That's what I learned, what it meant to live in Providence, and how to just do this stuff in leadership. But I was really amazed, and I'm in class with a lot of mostly Providence school teachers who are pretty amazing human beings, but are feeling starved for information, right? And like we all went through nonviolence training with the Institute a couple weeks ago, and for some of them, it was really hard because it was stuff they like, in terms of just like Black history, civil rights history, they didn't learn it. They didn't learn it. And like, I know we talk a lot about our kids not learning it. Well, they were kids too, and they didn't learn it. And now they're teaching our kids. So, you know, the more I learn, it's less about like bad people not wanting to do their job. I mean, there's that too, right? There's definitely that too. But a lot of it is just, we don't have the systems to properly prepare people at all. And we think that people are going into the classroom confident and like they know everything, and they're still afraid. They're like deer in headlights having to teach like groups of kids, and they don't want to fuck it up. Excuse my language, I know there's kids in here. They don't want to mess it up. There's definitely work to do. Like there's no excuse now. There's the internet. You can learn about Black mathematicians. You can learn about like all different types of scientists. And like, no, we don't just rap, even though some of us do. So like, not to make excuses for teachers, there are, like, you're in a profession, you have to do the work. You gotta put in the extra time. Right, you gotta put in that time in, but at the same time, I do feel for teachers because I think like there's a lot of education that they don't have. So I guess all I'm saying, Gigi, is I feel for your position and holla at me.
Kyle, and then I'm gonna have one question from the back, and then we have a question to all the panelists and what action are you taking? So we're gonna end with that, but Kyle, you can respond, and then where's the question in the back with the red hat? And then, go ahead, Kyle.
I think Kyle's the only one I don't know.
Yeah, so hi Gigi, I'm Kyle. I know you, but it's nice to meet you officially. I just wanted to say quickly, thank you for being that teacher, that educator who goes above and beyond to find the resources for students and colleagues, because I think it takes a lot. But to echo Shonda's point, it really only takes one. So being the example that you are, others see and they follow. So I think for everybody who's in this space that is worried about what's going to happen with our kids, it's going to happen one kid at a time, one teacher at a time, one classroom at a time. And I'll just say that because one of my favorite cousins who, to hear her tell it, was always math challenged all the way through her undergrad degree, is now leading math education for a district, and just thinking about how changing your mindset helps to change your opportunity. And every day I see her share new solutions for math, new ways of thinking about math, and she's sharing it online, right? It's free. You can get curriculum anyway. You just have to know what you're looking for. My great uncle used to say, you can't find what you're not looking for. So if you're innovative and creative and really want to do the best for your students, there are resources out there. But if you don't know where to go because you were educated in 1969 and you're still using the same curriculum from 1969 and the same syllabus and the same text material, those are the teachers we got to work with. Because I think there was a time for them to be productive and positive, and now there's a time for us to have a conversation about what their next opportunity looks like, because our kids, we can't afford to sacrifice one more year in that way. And I don't say this to promote displacement, because anybody who knows me knows that I'm really about a jobs agenda. So for the next 3 years, you're only going to hear me talk about housing, and this year it'll be census too. But it's really a jobs agenda. I believe everybody deserves a job, and people come to work ready to work, prepared to work, deserve to get paid appropriately. But our kids are too important. We can't afford for folks that are not willing to get into today's educational opportunity game to step it up for our kids to continue to be in those same seats. So as we shift this education paradigm, we'll have to begin to think differently about who's in the classroom and what those roles look like. But when you're ready to make a change, you will. So thank you for Gigi.
And if you guys don't notice, I've been letting people talk that may not seem like voting. All of this matters because you make your voice heard by voting. And these changes happen by the people voting and then the people who are in the seats. You had a question in the back?
Oh yeah, my question was in regards to the voter. So I worked the polls, 2 years ago, and so one issue, because I did both the primary and then I did the general. One of the issues, the area I worked was in Cranston, but on the reservoir, Triangle,
Yeah, the reservoir.
So it's a mixed community. Cranston East is right near there. The one issue that I think was the biggest thing was that people didn't know that was the neighborhood that they need to go in. They had to go vote somewhere else. Even my aunt had to go vote on the other side of Cranston. And already Cranston in itself was already split. We got west and we got east. So even within Cranston, for example, it's very different and diverse in that sense. So I want to ask that question. If there's something in place in terms of if somebody moves even to another city, like if there's going to be something updated in the database, so when it comes for either primary or the election, they're not at the full saying, oh, I gotta go somewhere else just to get it.
So the online voter registration will be the most up to date on where you vote, right?
Yes.
So check that before you go. Do you have other suggestions, Ron?
Anytime you move, you do have to update your address. And so you can either do it at the DMV when you update your license, or you can go online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Make a simple change to your voter registration. You'll be notified by your new town, tell you exactly where to vote. But you're right, you do have to vote at the location that's attached to your house, essentially, because it's a ballot. It's a group of people you're going to vote for. So you've got to make sure you vote where, based on where you live, and you've got to make sure your address is updated as possible. You need to be registered to vote where you actually live. So we try to make it as easy as possible to make those updates, but the voter does have to make that update. Although, again, if you do go to the DMV, we talked about automated voter registration. If you go to the DMV, it'll automatically update for you.
What's the website online?
Vote.ri.gov.
Thank you.
Vote.ri.gov. Did you want to say something before I ask?
I do.
Okay.
Very quickly, for the educators, we started an initiative in 2017 where we offer our real voting machines and we make real ballots so that high schools can elect their student government leaders. So we've been to over 50, done over 50 events since 2017. It does a number of things. Teachers love it, students love it because they get to vote. They get the I voted sticker, but they also realize how easy it is to cast a ballot. Everyone here that's voted before knows how easy it is to actually slide your ballot into a machine. But think about somebody who's never voted before. They don't know what it's like. So we're trying to get out to as many high schools as we possibly can to offer this service. Real machines, real ballots. We make them free of charge. So for all the educators out there, please spread the word. And then finally, on your polling place question, we have worked with the University of Rhode Island, where it's on a queuing theory study, where we're going to redesign polling places so that there'll be smaller lines on election day. Sometimes lines are formed because of the way polling places are set up. You know, when you vote in small gyms or in churches, places that may not be conducive to be polling places, but because space is limited, we don't have a lot of choices. So this study that we're doing with the University of Rhode Island is really working to help alleviate those lines by setting up polling places better. We've already seen some improvements over the last couple of years, and we're going to continue to work with URI to make sure that we are we have polling places set up as nicely as possible.
And how long is your study with URI?
I'm sorry?
How long is that study?
We started the study about over a year ago, and it's kind of a continuing, and they've done such a good job that other states are hearing about it, and they're looking to get the model sent for other towns and other states.
What it also does, it tells us the optimal time that people go into which polling places. So we assumed that the time that people would go in is during lunchtime. We found out that the majority of people, voters, go in around 10 o'clock in the morning. And so what it's going to do is help us to identify how many of our voting machines need to be at what locations, depending on the number of people that go to those polling places.
So URI did a phenomenal job really helping us to identify how many people go to what location so that we can say, okay, we need this number of machines, we need this number of people, and this is what the flow looks like, so that we're able to really maneuver in a way that keeps the line down. Now, the other piece to this is, we don't handle elections on the day of. That's the responsibility of the Board of Elections. And so, yes, our office did the study. We were able to get the resources for it. We were able to work with the University of Rhode Island. But it is now on the Board of Elections to take this study and do what it is that needs to be done. And so I just want to make sure y'all are aware of that, although we're very excited about it, and this is now becoming a national trend for people to pick this up. They've actually had 3 or 4 other universities that are looking at this to implement it in other states. So we are trendsetters in that way. However, the Board of Elections has to implement it.
Is the board voted in? How's the board set up, Board of Elections? Are they appointed?
They're appointed by the governor.
That's great.
So, I'm going to ask you, because we have about 5 minutes, so I'm going to ask everybody, I know you had a question, is it like a quick question, or is it one that's going to take like lots of insight?
I hope it's a quick one.
All right, go ahead.
Would a letter writing campaign or phone call campaign to the Board of Elections do any good, do you think?
Everything helps.
It can't.
Everything
So
helps.
they did, the University of Rhode Island, Professor Mock, who did the study, did a presentation to the Board of Elections to share their findings. And it was very well received.
Okay. All right, so we asked our panel beforehand to talk about one thing, one action step that you are going to do moving forward. And so I'm going to give everybody a chance to talk about what that, we'll leave Shonda for last. And then start with Kyle and go all the way down.
So mine is easy, and I think all of you can help too. How many people have access to a cell phone? Like one that has like real like internet connectivity, right? So everybody in my family, everybody that I know, when I see them, I'm going to pull out my phone and have been doing this to go to vote.ri.gov and ask them to enter their information and verify that they've actually updated their address, verify that they know where their precinct is. If they're going to go vote, they know where they're going well in advance of April. So when April, whatever date comes up, April 16, and they say, oh my God, I gotta go vote, and they go to the place they went 2 years ago or last year, they're not mistaken because they already know in advance. And then the second thing that I'm going to do as we get closer to the day is to really begin talking about the candidates and the ballot items that we're going to find. Because most people, when they go in, they decide while they're in the voting booth who they're going to vote for and whether or not they're going to support initiatives that end up on our general election ballot. That's too late. You don't have time to actually research or understand the implications for your election that day. So I got 2 things. Make sure they're registered properly in advance. And then secondly, make sure they understand the candidates and issues that are going to be on our ballot.
Jim.
The NAACP Providence is going to do a lot of things, but if it comes down to one priority, it's going to be working with the Secretary of State's office to make sure that early voting does pass this year. The Speaker of the House asked me to meet with him next month, which is next week, I guess, starting in January, about NAACP priorities. I'm going to make sure that he understands that one of our top priorities, if not our top priority, is early voting. It is so important in terms of everything else that we've been talking about. So we're going to be, organizing and making sure that we do anything we have to do to support the Secretary of State in an effort to pass early voting. We have a coalition with the League of Women Voters, the ACLU, and about 10 other organizations. And matter of fact, if you want to join, please do, to talk about voter education, voter registration, voter everything. And I just think that, this is the one thing that should have happened last year in terms of what the Secretary wanted. It didn't happen. It's going to happen. We're going to make it happen this year. So, early voting.
Ms. Carla.
So my action step is to push this this work forward through Leaders of Color and the Equity Institute, and to continue to connect with Jim and with everybody on this panel to see how we can support the work. And in March, dedicate our Leaders of Color meetup to voting and having somebody come to kind of share what they need to do and know the exact dates of voting.
Ms. Angel.
Cool. So I work at AS20, but I'm not here representing them. I'm representing me right now. So what I'm going to do is I am going to find out where all the cool kids live and figure out which ward you live in, and start trying to encourage people to run for city council. And actually make a little hit list of people who I need to talk to and start encouraging people to do that.
Okay, hit list in a positive way.
In a good way.
Ms. Shonda.
So as you all know, I head an educational justice organization. One of our pillars is social consciousness and civic responsibility, because we, through engagement's not gonna work, as y'all seen. So our young people in the last year have been immersed in Census 101 work. So they have already told their parents about census work, and census is very important because of redistricting. Y'all need to know that, because it goes with voting. And then we're doing a voter registration drive with our young people, registering all high school students at the age of 16, letting them know. Also, you cannot vote till you're 18, but we have high school students in our program at 17 who will be turning 18 before November. So folks will be voting. In addition to that, we are in the forefront of the Cook versus Raimondo. So that's a lot of stuff, but they're all connected. Intersection that.
Yes. So I wasn't asked what my action step is, but as the moderator, I can tell you that I have an action step for all of y'all. Find 2 neighbors. Check with them, their own voters, where they're voting. If they're not voting, talk to them about it. If they need a ride, bring them. I'm going to vote at so-and-so time. Do you want to go with me? Just 2. Make it 5. Whatever you want, but just 2. Whatever you do, and you'll see from me, my action step will be, I'm known for social media. I'm known for trying to break the stigma of vulnerability being a negative. So I will personally, anytime I have a date, I will do some social media campaign that talks about the date. I'll maybe work with Secretary of State's office to come up with a social media campaign that really, if you see it, share it. Don't just let it pass by and you read it and that's enough. Just share it. Because everything I do is public, a little too public according to my family. But everything I do is public. And just share it. Because that is how we get change, is to be a part of it and to know that your voice matters and that you matter. And if you are not okay with it, it's not okay to just bitch. Sorry. If you ain't voting and you ain't doing anything about it, I don't want to hear from you. So do something about it. So I want to thank everybody for coming today, but I'm going to give the last word to Juan. I don't know if he wants to speak, but this would not have happened without him. So I may be moderating, but this is his thing. We're trying to do more together. Because we're both people who are out there and we have many hats, and so I'm going to give Juan last words.
I'll make it quick. No, I just want to thank everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. I have questions, something to say. Thank you, good night. But like I said, I wanted to make this year end on a note of action, and I appreciate everyone at the panel who participated and agreed to participate. Angel, I want to talk to you about that, what you talked about putting a hit list together. I really like that idea. Really, it's galvanizing our community. Stop complaining on the outside. It's time to get on the inside and make change. I see a lot of people from the outside always complaining, say, oh, this doesn't happen, that doesn't happen. Well, make it happen. That's all I'm going to say, is just make it happen. You can make it happen individually and then galvanize together. And voting is just one of them. Voting is just one of them. I voted for the first time in 2008 for Obama. And I'm 45 years old. And I didn't believe in voting. I didn't believe my vote counted. And ever since then, I've been voting ever since. And I've been trying to create ways of whatever obstacle, there's a problem, we all know the problem. Look for the solution. Stop focusing on the problem. Focus on the solution. You know what I'm saying? If you don't think it will work, try it anyway. So I really appreciate it. I didn't expect the turnout with the weather. And like they said, this is available online and it's for free. And I'll send it to everybody who shared the email. I'll send the link so you can see the full and share it. Please share this. We were the first Rhode Island screening. The goal is 2020 screenings throughout the year. And like I said, I just couldn't believe this was as recent as last year. You know, this is as recent as last year. So there's one more thing. There's an event happening here. A friend of mine, Michelle, they're doing a fundraiser here for her. What is the name, John?
First, start the new year off the right way. Help out someone in need.
Help out someone in need. So my friend, it's a friend of mine, Michelle. She worked with me at the Black Rep. Yeah, so I can't find it. But it's actually going to be on New Year's Eve. I'm sorry, on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
And they're trying to raise funds. I think she's battling cancer. And she worked with me at the Providence Black Rep. She also worked with me at FET. She's a phenomenal young lady, very talented, poet, unbelievable. So they're having an event and a fundraiser for her. So I just wanted to mention that for this New Year's Day. But again, thank you everybody. I really appreciate it. There's a survey on your way out. You can get the link at survey.yespvd.org so I can continue to do events like this. I want to thank Nellie for stopping in. I want to thank Alicia, Shonda, Angel, Carla, Jim, my buddy Kyle, and Rob Rock. I'm going to plug Rob Rock. Rob Rock's been rocking with me since we did the first youth summit. And a lot of people didn't know you could pre-register at 16 years old. And Rob also worked with my son, who was a fellow at the Secretary of State's office, working on social media. And just definitely get them to pre-register. And then in between the 16 to 18, educate them.
Educate.
You know what I'm saying? Educate them. So now when they do get there, and they're at the age to vote, they have an idea on what they're voting for. Or they have an idea, you know what, I'm going to run. You know, so I'm actually encouraging that. Not just vote, actually be part of that solution, and that means be part of the makeup of the system change. Again, thank you for attending.
Thank you, everyone.